A biography is a detailed account of person's life, but it's more than just a narration of person's basic facts such as birth, birthplace, parents, education, and death. A biography also tells about person's life experiences. This presentation will talk about Dr. Jose Rizal's family, childhood, early education, education abroad, and the experiences he had that led to his capture, trial, and death. Now, together with my groupmates, allow us to help you know more facts about Dr. Jose Rizal.
Hello, I am Jordan Posalice and I am going to report the birth, family, and ancestry of our national hero Jose Rizal and also his childhood years. To start things off, Dr. Jose Rizal or Jose Potracio Rizal Mercado Alonso y Reolonda was born in June 19, 1861 in the city of Calamba, Laguna. And 3 days later, he was christened or bininyagan siya sa pinakamalapit na simbahan sa kanila when he was 3 days old. He was the seventh child of Don Francisco and Doña Teodora Rizal, and his family fondly called him Pepe. His family was well known and they were deemed as ilustrados or very influential at the time. Now, moving on to his childhood, our young Jose, in his childhood years, he was bright due to he was rooted in the prosperous town of Calamba. During the time, it was arising and developing during the time. During evenings, he takes long walks by the river and listen to his aya or personal servant as they tell him stories about fairies and other stories. And as they sit at the rooftop praying the rosary, and gives us the idea that Rizal and his family is also religious from a very young age, and they are introduced to Christianity. Now, our young Pepe's education started with his mother, Doña Teodora. He was taught basic Latin and the abacada in Latin, or the vowels. Yes. Then, when our young Pepe reached a certain age, his father arranged a private tutor named Leon Monroy. He taught our young Pepe reading and writing and the rudiments of Latin. He also honed his Latin whenever he was listening to Spanish visitors and the friars in the Rizal home, because due at the time, friars and Spaniards were very common in their household. Moreover, in our young Pepe's childhood, he became a companion to the parish priest, Father Leoncio. Oftentimes, he enjoyed playing at the church's garden, listening to various birds like the pipit and maya behind the church. Our young Pepe also uses free time, and learning handkerchief magic, using or doing the old false cutting a rope trick, and he also played with their neighbors' doves too. At a very young age, Jose Rizal was taught the rapidity in work by his uncle Gregorio. He was taught the value of rapidity in work, and at a very young age, he was deemed as a promising nephew among his siblings by his uncles, brothers, and his mother. A tragic time when our Dr. Jose Rizal's sister was lost. His sister named Concha. Her death was caused a sorrow to his family, himself to his family, because her sister was very close to him. This event was the one who drove our young Pepe to draw He learned how to convey his feelings through drawing and writing. At the age of 8, he wrote a poem named To My Fellow Children, or Sa Aking Mga Kababata, in the language of Tagalog. This poem is about the children in Calamba, Laguna, or the playmates that he had. And how it portrayed the love for the native language of the Philippines and the freedom that we could have that in that time. When he was 9 years old, when our young Pepe was 9 years old, his father take charge in his education. He was sent to a all-boys school in Binyan, Laguna, under supervision of Master Juan Shano Cruz, where his uncle Jose Alberto lived, and where acquired knowledge in traditional manner and liberal application of Arad. So, at the end of Jose Rizal's childhood, he requested that he would be sent to Manila for high school. And that will be another part would be reported by my group mates. That would be all from my part. Thank you.
Rizal in search for formal education in Ateneo and UST. So the 11 years old Pepe studied higher education at the Ateneo de Municipal under the supervision of the Jesuits. On June 10, 1872, Pepe accompanied by Pasiano to take the entrance exam in the College of San Juan de Letran. He passed out qualifying tests in Christian doctrine, reading, and arithmetic. So at first, Father Margin Fernando, the college registrar, refused the admittance of Rizal based on two reasons. First is late for registration, and second is sickly and underage. But thankfully, with the intercession of Manuel Burgos, the nephew of Father Burgos of Gumborza, he was accepted in Ateneo, where he studied from 1872 to 1877. The first year in Manila was important into Rizal's education. The Jesuit curriculum for 6-year course leading to a degree of Bachelor of Arts was considerably tougher than the present equivalents for high school and college. In all of the subjects, Jose was consistently graded as excellent. So Jose had been subjected thereafter to one of the world's most thorough and briefing system of indoctrination, the Jesuit Ratio Studorium under tight and constant discipline. Above all, Jesuit education pursue one aim, ad majorem Dei gloriam, it was all for the greater glory of God. The Jesuit educational system of education was more advanced than that of other students. Two groups of students who are studying in Ateneo, the Roman Empire is considered the internos or students that were boarding inside, and the Carthaginian Empire are the students who are studying outside at the Ateneo or externos. When the school year ended, Jose spent his summer vacation in Calamba, but he did not enjoy his vacation because his mother was still in prison. So at the end of the school year, he did not only receive excellent grades but also a gold medal for academic excellence. Then he returned to Calamba that summer, and usual he visited her mother in prison and comforted her by telling her about his scholastic exploits and some funny stories about his professors and classmates. As usual, his mother was very happy to hear his favorite son's outstanding performance in school. After this visit, Jose once again returned to the city for his studies. This time, he had shown an interest in reading romantic novels. Among his favorite was The Count of Monte Cristi by Alexander Dumas, and the history book that caught his attention was The Travel in the Philippines by Dr. Fyodor Hagor, a German scientist who stayed in the country from 1859 to 1860. In June 1874, Jose went back to Manila to continue his quest for knowledge. Shortly after classes had started that semester, his mother arrived telling him that she was already released from prison in Santa Cruz, Laguna. Rizal's senior year in Ateneo was a memorable one. On June 16, 1865, he became an interno under Father Francisco de Paula Sanchez, who was a very good professor and scholar. As the result, Jose topped all his subjects and brought home 5 gold medals at the end of the school year. Jose's last year of studies in Ateneo from 1876 to 1877 became more fruitful. He excelled in all subjects and gained recognition as the most brilliant Atenean of his time and the pride of the Jesuits. In March 1877, he received the degree of the Bachelor of Arts with the highest honor. So that's the end of the high school year and experience of Rizal at Ateneo. Having completed his Bachelor of Arts at Ateneo Municipal, Jose Rizal was now eligible for higher education at a university. His mother had second thoughts about sending her son to school because of the previous incident involving the execution of the friars Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora. However, it was his father who decided Rizal should attend University of Santo Tomas, a prestigious institution run by Dominican order. Rizal was uncertain which course of study he wanted to pursue. The Jesuit priest who had been his former mentor had advised him. In the end, he decided to study philosophy and letters. So after completing his first year, Rizal decided to study medicine. However, his grades in the medicine course were only fair and good compared with the excellent grades he got in all the subjects in Ateneo. So Rizal hated Dominican professors who were cruel and biased against his Filipino classmate who just kept quiet if being humiliated. Moreover, it was during his freshman year as a medical student when he experienced his first taste of Spanish brutality. While walking in the street one dark night, he failed to recognize a lieutenant of the Guardia Civil. With anger, the Spanish officer slashed his back with swords. Rizal reported it to Spanish Governor General, but he was ignored simple because Jose Rizal the Compliant was an Indio. In 1879, at the start of his junior year in UST, he lived in a boarding house in Intramuros where he met Leonor Rivera, who was the daughter of landlord Uncle Antonio Rivera. Jose and Leonor sprang a beautiful romance which they kept from their parents and friends. Leonor used Times as her pen name. The competition held by the Liceo Artistico Literario with the appoint a la Juventud Filipina, he won the special prize for Indians and Mestizos. The next year in the contest in honor for Cervantes allowed Spaniards, Mestizos, and Indians to enter the competition. The first prize for prose was awarded to Rizal's Consejo de los Dioses, and the jury gave it another special prize as the best critical appreciation. So everybody expected this prize to be won by Friar Evaristo Arias, one of the most brilliant literary men the University of Santo Tomas had. However, the award of the jury and the opening of the envelopes revealed the success of unknown medical students. So that's the end of Ateneo and UST education of Rizal.
So now, let's continue our journey as we take on how Rizal's education in Europe went. I am Neil Quijano. Join me in this adventure. Jose Rizal's education in Europe was a pivotal point in his life, which shaped his views on nationalism, social reform, and the future of the Philippines. So it all started during the 15th of May, 1882, when Rizal embarked for Singapore on a mail steamer, Salvadora. It is a type of steamship that was primarily used for carrying mail and passengers, and then from there, Rizal traveled by a French mail boat through the Suez Canal to Marseilles and to Barcelona. So in this case, it is all more about the travels and learnings of Rizal in his journey. And from Barcelona, Rizal quickly went to Madrid and continued his double course in philosophy and letters and in medicine. So that time, Rizal took double majors. However, it did not stop Rizal to find time for learning drawing, painting, and studying foreign languages under special teachers. Rizal was really fond of learning. And let us also take note that during his time in Europe, Rizal was able to learn and master not only one, but 10 languages, namely Latin, Greek, French, English, Italian, Catalan, Arabic, German, Sanskrit, and Hebrew. And after Madrid, Rizal went to Paris where he became a clinical assistant to Dr. Louis de Record, one of the famous oculists in France and also an author of a 3-volume standard work. When we say oculists, they are those medical professionals who specialize in diagnosis and treatment of eye diseases and disorders. Rizal wants to learn this skill because, as we all know, his mother Teodora has developed a growing blindness. And ultimately after that, Rizal also did work with several of the best ophthalmologists and personalities in Europe, like for example Virchow, Hagor, Blumentritt, and De Record. Rudolf Virchow was a head of Anthropological Society, and his ideas about the importance of social and political reform may also have resonated with Rizal, who was deeply concerned about the injustices and inequalities that existed in his native Philippines. Virchow was also a prominent figure in the German liberal movement, and he advocated for political and social reforms that would improve the lives of the ordinary people. And under Virchow's sponsorship, Rizal became a member of the Berlin Anthropological Society. So this leads us to the fall of 1885, where Rizal found himself studying art in Paris, visiting various museums, and associating with Filipino residents in the French capital. It was also in Paris where Rizal took his pen and started seriously upon the composition of a story of Philippine life. Hence, the Noli Me Tangere began. Later that time, Noli Me Tangere was printed, bound, and launched on the February 21, 1887 with the help of Maximo Viola. One of the most important contributions Viola made to Rizal's life was in the financial aspect. In 1897, Rizal was in Paris struggling to finance the publication of his novel Noli Me Tangere. Viola, who was also studying in Europe at that time, offered to lend Rizal the money he needed to print the book. This act of generosity allowed Noli Me Tangere to be published and become a landmark work in the Philippine history. The printing of the novel took place in a Berlin printing house where they charged the lowest rate of 300 for 2,000 copies. On the later trips, Rizal saw a painting of the Prometheus Bound in the Museum of Dresden. Prometheus Bound is a play by the ancient tragedian Aeschylus, believed to have been written in the 5th century BCE. The play tells the story of how the Titan Prometheus would defies the gods by giving fire and other gifts of knowledge to the humanity. After the time that he has spent in Italy and Rome, he figured out it's time to go back to the Philippines. Other than that, Yunora Rivera's silence and the reports about his mother's failing eyesight motivated Rizal more to go back to the Philippines. His journey of coming home starts from Rome to Marseilles, took a steamer on July 3, 1887 for Saigon, and transshipped to Manila. On August 5 years after the wanderings and many triumphs, he came home.
Because of the publication of the Noli Me Tangere and the uproar it caused among the friars, Rizal was warned by Pasiano, Silvestre, Chengoy, and other friends to return home. He was determined to return to the Philippines for the following reasons: to operate in his mother's eyes, to serve his people who had long been oppressed by the Spanish tyrants, to find out for himself how the Noli and his other writings were affecting the Filipinos and Spaniards in the Philippines, and to inquire why Leonor Rivera remained silent. On July 3, 1887, he boarded the steamer Genma, the same steamer who brought him to Europe 5 years ago. There were about 50 passengers, including 4 Englishmen, 2 Germans, 3 Chinese, 2 Japanese, many Frenchmen, and 1 Filipino who is Rizal. Rizal was the only one among the passengers who could speak many languages, so he acted as interpreter for his companions. On August 5, the Haipong arrived in Manila. He stayed in the city for a short time. He found Manila the same as when he left it 5 years ago. Rizal returned to Calamba and established a medical clinic. He used his specialized training in Paris as an ophthalmologist to perform a successful surgery on his mother's double cataracts, which had caused her to lose her sight. News of his skill as a doctor spread and patients flocked to Calamba. Rizal was able to earn 900 pesos in a few months and 5,000 pesos by February 1888. Rizal received a letter from Governor General Terrero asking him to come to Malacañang Palace. Despite the charge against him, Rizal denied advocating subversive ideas and explained that he only exposed the truth. Governor General Terrero was curious about Rizal's book and requested a copy to read. Rizal promised to secure a copy for him, and he eventually found one and gave it to Terrero. To ensure Rizal's safety, he was assigned a bodyguard, Don Jose Tabiel de Andrade by Terrero. However, at the beginning of 1888, Terrero advised Rizal to leave the country, and this was essentially an official order of deportation, immediately due to the threat of arrest and possible execution. Tereno's warning showed the severity of the situation. Rizal was aware of the dangers he faced, but he was reluctant to leave the Philippines. His personal life was affected by the end of his relationship with Leonor Rivera, and two factors pushed him to leave: the success of Noli Me Tangere and its impact on the Filipino mind. Rizal planned to return to Europe via the United States as he could not complete or publish his intended sequel in the Philippines. Dr. Jose Rizal traveled extensively starting from Manila to Hong Kong, Japan, the United States, and Europe. In the neighboring city of Macau, Rizal encountered exiles from the 1872 unrest known as the Años Hystericos in Philippine history. He lived with Dr. Antonio Maria Regidor for a short time in London and met Dr. Reinhold Rost, an expert in Malayan customs and languages. Rizal annotated Dr. Morga's book, The Correct and Distorted History of the Philippines, which was later published in Paris. In Paris, Rizal renewed his friendship with Juan Luna and wrote an article for La Solidaridad about his sister Lucia's husband's funeral and justice. Rizal completed El Filibusterismo in Biarritz, France in 1891. His family in the Philippines faced land issues, and General Weyler's actions led to the destruction of properties in Calamba. Rizal returned to Hong Kong, practiced medicine, and wrote about the Calamba controversy for the Hong Kong Telegraph. He visited British North Borneo and secured land for a Filipino colony with help from his friend Dr. Roth. Rizal corresponded with Governor General Despujol about returning to the Philippines and emphasized the importance of equality before the law. Upon his return to Manila with his sister Lucia, Rizal attended a banquet hosted by Filipino lodges and founded La Liga Filipina, which aimed to unite Filipinos for economic advancement, personal development, and education. The League also advocated for resisting oppression through lawful means.
Rizal arrived in Manila on June 26, 1892, accompanied by his sister Lucia. He went to Malacanang to pay a courtesy call and to interview Gobernador General Despujol regarding the issue about his family. The Gobernador General dissuaded Rizal from going to Borneo, but promises him land on any island from Calamba. Rizal was arrested by Gobernador General Despujol for the reason of having a bundle of leaflets entitled Four Friars inside of his baggage. Rizal was imprisoned in Fort Santiago for a week, and then he was deported to the Bitan in northern Mindanao. Now, quick recap or quick definition of Fort Santiago. It is a place in Intramuros used to be a Spanish military fortress that imprisoned many Filipinos and Americans during the Spanish colonial period and World War II. Now, during Rizal's imprisonment in the rule, he wrote his final letters to his family and closest friends before he was shot to death on December 30, 1896 at Bagong Bayan. When Rizal arrived in Dapitan, he stayed in the residence of Don Ricardo Carnicero, a captain of infantry and political military, a government of Dapitan. Rizal and Carnicero have a great time having a conversation, and after that, Carnicero afterwards learned that Rizal was not a person who had committed a felony, which is why he gave good reports to the Gobernador General about Rizal. Rizal admired Captain Carnicero for being generous, and as a sign of gratitude and appreciation, Rizal wrote a poem on Don Carnicero's birthday. Now, Rizal lived a simple life in exile. He built his own house, planted many trees, and enhanced his skills in medical profession. He was also visited by his family for a while, just to lessen Rizal's loneliness. Now, during his stay in Dapitan, he still pursued his interest in science, arts, literature, linguistics, and other intellectual pursuits. He even studied Bisaya and Malaya languages and wrote Tagalog grammar. In Rizal's 4 years of life in Dapitan, he still tried to pursue and live his life to the fullest. He created so many contributions before he was executed in Bagong Bayan. In the 36 years that Rizal lived, he created such significant life that was full of joy, sorrow, and fulfillment.
Rizal and Katipunan. I'll tackle first the introduction, Rizal, then Katipunan, and lastly, the summary. Rizal and Katipunan are two significant historical entities in the Philippines during the late 19th century. Rizal is known as the national hero of the Philippines, while the Katipunan is a revolutionary movement that aimed to overthrow Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines. In this report, I will explore the relationship between Rizal and the Katipunan, their respective contributions, and their impact on Philippine history. Jose Rizal, also known as the father of Philippine nationalism, was a prominent figure in the Philippine Revolution against Spanish colonial rule. He was a writer, poet, and a national hero of the Philippines. The Katipunan, on the other hand, was a revolutionary organization founded by Andres Bonifacio in 1892 with the goal of achieving Philippine independence from Spain. The organization was composed of Filipino nationalists and revolutionaries who sought to overthrow Spanish colonial rule through armed resistance. In 1896, the Katipuneros decided to inform Rizal of their plans to launch the revolution and sent Pio Valenzuela to visit Rizal in Dapitan. Valenzuela's accounts of his meeting with Rizal have been greatly doubted, but according to him, Rizal objected the plans, saying that doing so would be tantamount suicide since it would be difficult to fight Spaniards who had the advantage of military resources. Rizal and the Katipunan had different approaches to achieving Philippine independence, but they shared the same goal. Rizal believed in peaceful reform and advocated for education and national unity as a means to uplift the Philippines. He believed that the Filipinos could gain equal rights with the Spaniards through peaceful means. The Katipunan, on the other hand, believed in armed revolution as the only means to achieve Philippine independence. The Katipunan's ideology was more radical and revolutionary than Rizal's, and they rejected the idea of peaceful reform. In summary, Rizal and the Katipunan were both instrumental in the Philippine Revolution against Spanish colonial rule, with Rizal's writing inspiring the nationalistic sentiments that fueled the revolution and the Katipunan leading the armed resistance.
Good day everyone, I am Charmaine Atik. I'm from Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Biological Science. This is my report in life and works of Dr. Jose Rizal. And my reporting is all about the trial and execution of Dr. Jose Rizal. On December 29, 1896, Rizal was formally notified of the court verdict of death. He was to be shot at sunrise of the next day. The news of the verdict spread the wildfire. Tension gripped Manila as the Spaniards feared that the rebels would enter the city and liberate Rizal. The verdict had been reached after an unprecedented one-day trial held the day after Christmas at military composed of 6 officers and presided over by Colonel Jose Tagores Arjona. The auxiliary advocate general himself, Enrique de Alcocer, he was the prosecutor of that trial and execution of Dr. Jose Rizal. Rizal was defended by Lieutenant Luis Travil de Andrade. He was the brother of his bodyguard in Calamba in 1887 to 1888. And the next one is the preliminary investigation of Dr. Jose Rizal. Proof of Rizal's guilt had been gathered by Captain Francisco de Olive, and the preliminary investigation was conducted by a special judge, Colonel Rafael Dominguez. Rizal was condemned for founding illegal associations and promoting and inducing rebellion, the first being the necessary means to be second. Then he was subjected to a continuous day-to-day inquisitorial interrogation without benefit of counsel. He was not even allowed to confront those who testified against him. In 2 short days, Rizal was forced to make a rapid identification from a lineup of some 27 characters whose faces he did not see and whose voices he could not hear, but whose words would be utilized to convict him. He was questioned on several items. Among them is participation in various political activities in association with certain people and his knowledge in circumstances. The investigation had to trump up evidence from Rizal's correspondence, written 6 to 8 years prior to organization of La Liga Filipina, which Spaniards alleged to cause of the revolution, from the poems to Talisay and Condiman, from the speeches of Katipuneros that ended with "Long live Philippines, long live liberty." Desperate from the more proofs of Rizal's guilt, Captain Olive had Pasiano tortured the unconsciousness Pasiano. Pasiano adamantly denied his brother's guilt and silently endured one torture after another. He was questioned and he was matched his younger brother, courage in facing death and defying Spanish tyranny. When the authorities were through with the almost dead Pasiano, he was to be carried home in a stretcher. He was paralyzed in speeches from several days. So that will be all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is Dr. Sinukusan. So I'll be reporting the trials of Dr. Jose Rizal. So first, so this is the persons, the judges who pursued the trials of Dr. Jose Rizal. So first, Judge Rafael Dominguez pursued the speedy trial, and also were approved by the governor and Judge Nicolas de la Peña. And this is the charges that Dr. Jose Rizal received. So first, he is the principal organizer, the soul of the insurrection in the Philippines, founder of societies, newspaper, and book devoted to favoring between public rebellious and seditious ideas among people, and he also charged of being the chief of filibusterism in the country. And this is the person who defended Dr. Jose Rizal, named Luis Tabiel de Andrade, Rizal's lawyer, and also the brother of Jose Tabiel de Andrade, who is the bodyguard of Jose Rizal. Luis Tabiel de Andrade argued that the incidents presented by the lawyer happened several years before the rebellion broke out, and that had Rizal been accused before August 9 of that year, and no court would convict him on the same evidences. He also argued that the prosecutor's impression on Rizal's writing was a misconception, and that Rizal only asked for the recognition of and respect for the rights of the people. And he also argued that a person could not be condemned for voicing the sentiments of his people, neither could he condemn for organizing the Liga, because its aim was to unite the people for the promotion of commerce in the industry, agriculture, and arts. And he also cited that the technicality of the law said that Rizal's guilt had been proven by the confession of the accused by the reliable witness by expert testimony of official documents, visual proof, and even by the definitive and conclusive indications. And he also explained that the witnesses presented by the prosecution were biased against Rizal because they were also involved in the same case before having been apprehended when the Katipunan was discovered. And the witnesses presented Rizal as the only instigator and the promoter of the revolution by saving themselves. And he also, referring to the Liga, he argued also that the statutes of the organization which Rizal wrote did not show any evidence of illegality. And he concluded that Rizal's guilt had been proven legally, and the accused, which Dr. Jose Rizal, should be acquitted and all his rights should be restored in the name of justice. Dr. Jose Rizal defended himself also by hinting his writing the addition to my defense. He called to the court to the fact that the Liga died shortly after it was organized. Because he's been exiled to the Pitan, and then the Liga were born without his knowledge. And by concerning the rebellion, Dr. Jose Rizal reiterated his counsel's argument that he had nothing whatsoever to do with political affairs from July 6, 1892 to June of the present year. And he said also if he knew of and favored rebellion, he could have escaped easily from that Pitan. And since his activities at the Pitans were questioned because he built a hospital, buy a farmland, etc. He explained that he was resigned to his exile. Then it gave him time to write, but not to incite rebellion as the prosecution alleged. And he also argued that if he had known about the date and time of the outbreak of the revolution, he would have taken the necessary precaution to avoid possible arrest. And he also called attention to the absurdity of the accusation that he was the leader of the rebels. Then he asked what kind of a chief is he whose followers say yes and he say no. So this is the time where Dr. Jose Rizal found guilty, and so the death of Dr. Jose Rizal was certain, and he also knew it, but Dr. Jose Rizal wanted to take his last stand in the name of justice. So the findings and the decision of the court were forwarded to Judge Advocate Nicolas de la Peña, who referred it to Governor General Camilo de Polavela for confirmation the same evening. So on the Sunday, the governor's approval of the verdict and the consequent release of the orders for Rizal's execution were declared for Monday. So the Rizal's execution will be reported by our other members. So thank you for listening.
Dr. Jose Rizal was sentenced to death by the Spanish colonial government for the crime of rebellion. It was an emotional event in our history, and it strengthened the movement toward revolution. So, good day everyone, I am Sunshine Cantiga, and in this video, we will be looking back to the last few days of our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal, before he was executed in Bagong Bayan. On December 29, 1896, the death sentence was read to Rizal. He refused to sign the notification reiterating his innocence and strongly objecting to the part that referred to him as Chinese mestizo. But he had to sign it as required by the law. Around 7 a.m. of December 29, Rizal was transferred to his death cell at Fort Santiago. He had only 24 hours to live, but with the guard's permission, Jose Rizal sent a note to his family. Then visitors came, including members of his family, the newspapermen, his defense counsel, and the priests, mostly Jesuits who were working for his retraction from the Masonry. Later in that afternoon, his mother, Doña Teodora, came, accompanied by Maria, Trinidad, Narcisa, his niece Angelica, and little Mauricio, his favorite nephew. The first to enter his cell was his mother, Doña Teodora. After he kissed her hand, he asked her to seek authorities' permission for the family to bury his body. One by one, others came. Rizal looked around his cell for something to give to each one. To Angelica, he gave a handkerchief. To Narcisa, he gave his wicker chair. And to Mauricio, he gave a belt and a watch with a chain. To Trinidad, who understood English, he gave a alcohol burner and he whispered to her in English that there is something in it. Also in Maria, he had nothing more to give, but he confided to her that he would marry Josephine. So those serves as the last words of Rizal to each member of his family before he was executed. On the first hour of December 30, 1896, Father Balaguer said that Rizal confessed again. As Rizal's request, Father Balaguer said a mass and he received a Holy Communion. After the mass, Father Jose Villaclara suggested the reading of the acts of faith, hope, and charity. He then turned to Thomas à Kempis' Imitation of Christ. Then a retraction was required by the Archbishop for Rizal to sign. A retraction is a document stating that Rizal was a Catholic and retracted all his writing against the Church.
It is stated, I declare myself a Catholic, and in this religion which I was born and educated, I wish to live and die. I retract with all my heart whatever in my words, writings, publications, and conduct has been contrary to my character as son of the Catholic Church.
Some says that the retraction document was a forgery and that it was not Rizal's handwriting, while others doubt that Rizal would sign a document stating his retraction to his anti-Catholic works and ideas. That's why it became the most controversial issues in the Philippine history. On the eve of his execution, Rizal wrote a final poem. This is the original photograph of his poem. In this poem, he shows that after the hardships and sacrifices, we will meet the freedom. It also tells us about how beautiful the Philippines is and how Rizal wants us to learn from our past and to see the truth about how the world view us. Rizal didn't give a title to this poem. His friend Mariano Ponce titled it Mi Ultimo Adios, or My Last Farewell. Those are some events that happens during Rizal's last hours.
Dr. Jose Rizal was executed in Bagong Bayan, now known as Luneta in Manila, on December 30, 1896. Good day, I am Johanna Srisi Hadlock and I am going to discuss about Dr. Jose Rizal's execution. But before we dive into the details about Rizal's execution, we need to know why he was facing execution in the first place. On December 26, 1896, the military court put Rizal on trial and found him guilty of rebellion, sedition, and conspiracy. For additional information, sedition is the act of inciting people to rebel against an authority, and in this context, it pertains to rebellion against the Spanish colonizers. It was explained that Rizal's writing fatally and necessarily incited rebellion. So going back to the main topic, Dr. Jose Rizal was executed on December 30, 1896 at 7 in the morning. He was only 35 years old when he was executed. He was flanked by Gabriel de Andrade, Father Villaclara, and Estanislao March. At the execution square, he was blessed and given the crucifix to kiss. Then Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo checked his pulse and found it normal and steady, which was very uncommon for someone who is facing execution. Before he was shot, he had two requests. His first request was to be shot in the front, denoting that he was not a traitor. However, this request was rejected. While the second request was that his head be spared, and it was fortunately granted. Rizal's body was put in an unmarked grave in Paco Cemetery with a small marble stone bearing his initials in reversed order. The sad fact about Rizal's execution was not only about his death, but also the fact that people who shot him were his fellow countrymen who he fought hard for.